and because he wanted to give him a present, because there's a business deal in the whole thing also. And so because Sammy Marks had many factories in Pretoria at that time, and he thought that, you know, if he got into the good books of Kitchener, he would flourish as he flourished in the Boer times. In any case, Sammy Marks said to Kitchener, "But don't you want Kruger also?" He said, "No, not Kruger. I'll take the Boer figures, but I don't want Kruger." So Kruger remained in the sheds over there. And only in 1921 did General Smuts succeed in bringing Kruger back to Pretoria, and then they placed the lone Kruger on that stand that you see. You could see there no figures around him on that base there. This was a base that was erected on Church Square, but then moved to Prince's Park, and there Kruger stood until 1925, which was the centenary of the birth of Kruger, and then at that time Afrikaner nationalism was in the rise, and they agitated that Kruger had to be brought back into the city, not on the side over there. And Smuts succeeded in convincing Kitchener's heirs that they must have back these figures, and in 1925 they erected the sculpture in front of the station in Pretoria on that base with the figures there and Kruger standing up, but not on Church Square. So it was in front of the station, and only in the 1950s was it moved to where it is at present. And I'm sure it's going to move also, very soon they'll move it away. It's probably going to go to the Voortrekker Monument, because I've heard something about that. Next one. Now, what happened is that when Van Wouw went to Johannesburg in 1903, he immediately got a great deal of architectural sculpture work. And there's something like 15 different buildings on which he did sculpture. He had such a thriving practice that he couldn't do it alone, so he had to import another sculptor to assist him. There was a sculptor by the name of Marega that worked with him. And all these buildings that you see, these are only a few of the 15 different buildings that he did sculpture works for. He made fan lights for the interior, and he did sculpture on the outside of the building. The only one of these buildings that you see over here, no, two of them still stand. That is the Rand Club that still exists today, and this building, which has these beautiful sculptural figures over the doorway. There's the Standard Bank in Johannesburg, Those are the only two buildings of all these buildings that Van Wouw did sculpture work on that still exists. Of the 15, only 2 of them have survived. And none of those sculptures have survived. They've all been smashed up. We don't know where they are. So, but what is important is that we must realize that he was really into the high life in Johannesburg at that time. Can I have the next slide? And these were the people for whom he worked. This was Milner's kindergarten. These were the men, the Randalls, that did all the contracting, and he worked in, he had to do all the decorations in their new houses. They had all these magnificent houses here in Parktown. All those houses, there are still of them that exist, that have where I think the architectural school is in one of the buildings that still has Van Wouw fan lights and doors and things in, because he had to carve the doors, but he didn't carve it himself. He got sculptors to do the carving work. He did most of the modelling. And then naturally there's Sir A.B. Bailey that also paid, and then Sir Lionel and Lady Phillips. And these are the Baldini portraits that they had made of them in Europe, when Baldini was the famous artist in the early 1900s. And those are the 2 Baldini portraits of these very important people in Johannesburg at that time, because they really drove the cultural life in Johannesburg in the early days. Next slide. And here are some of those 15 sculptures that he made. There's, in other words, 10 smaller sculptures of Africans, and then 5 Boer figures these are the most famous of all his sculptures. I mean, wherever you come and you hear about Van Wouw, these are the sculptures, the Lesotho Witness, the Skapu Player, the Shangaan, the Sleeping African, the Dacha Smoker, Siwana Tokosilia, or the Coffee Drinker, the Zulu, the Laughing African, the Millipop Eater, and that one is the African Drinking Water. Those are the 10 famous sculptures that he made in this time. And they are all masterpieces. I mean, if you really see a very good casting of these, they are absolutely magnificent. Next slide. And then amongst there were also the 4 Boer figures. Now I think these Boer figures were actually made on his own. These were things that he wanted to make for himself. I don't think the landlords asked him to make these. You see, I must tell you that what the landlords did with these African sculptures is, these guys were all miners. All those Africans that you saw over there were miners, and they used to work during the week, and over weekends they would roam the city and work in the gardens. They were garden workers, and these were ideal models. So what he did is, as they came around to go and work in his garden, he grabbed them and said, you know, come and pose for me. And they became his models. But this was also exactly what the mining magnates wanted. They wanted figures that would represent the typical Africans that were working on the mines at that time. And these would be wonderful presents to give to, you know, visitors from Europe, important visitors. If the Governor General or something came here, you give him a present of an African miner. This is, you know, these are the people that are doing the work for all the gold that's going to England at that time. And these Boer figures are the ones he made actually for himself. And yeah, if you look, you'll see there's the large Bad News and the small one, and the large Kruger in Exile and the small one, and then there's this Dopper Noentjie van die Onderveld, Girl of the Underveld. And what I want to show you is this was an artist that Van Wouw knew in Holland called Toon de Pace. And Toon de Pace made this sculpture for a bridge in Holland. And if you compare that figure with Van Wouw's Kruger in Exile, you'll see the whole stance is absolutely the same thing. So he just used that and made his figure. And there are many of his sculptures. For instance, his Bushman Hunter, that figure is a copy of Rodeur's John the Baptist. If you look at John the Baptist, the stance is absolutely the same thing. So he often used other artists' ideas to make his own sculptures. Next one, please. Now, I want to talk about his connection with the mining world. The mining world, as I said, gave him the commission to do these sculptures. But they also commissioned many other sculptures. And in 1910, when the new Governor General visited Johannesburg, they wanted to make an impression on him. And they got Van Wouw to design a triumphal arch in Commissioner Street. And there you have the triumphal arch, a beautiful triumphal arch with the words welcome, and there it says the mining industry. And it says that the mining industry welcomes you. And Van Wouw made this arch, and he placed a figure of a white miner, this one, a white miner on the top of the arch. And now one asks, why a white miner? He's always been making African miners, now suddenly there's a white miner. Why a white miner? No. The message that he had to give to the Governor General was, you know, the mining world is in the hands of civilized whites. You know, the Africans are doing the work, but we whites are the civilized. We control the mining world. And that was the message that had to be sort of, you know, given to the new Governor General that came over there. And there you can see Van Wouw working on the model for that sculpture, and then it was probably made 3 times life size. It looks like that if you compare the figure to that man standing underneath there. It's a very, very large sculpture. What happened to it, nobody knows. It was probably smashed. And this figure, there are only 2 of them. many years later, somebody discovered the plaster cast and then realized that it is Van Wouw, had two of them cast in bronze, smashed the plaster cast, and now there's only two of them left. And so it's like the guy with the stamps, you know. There are only two very important stamps in the world of one kind, and the guy that has the one buys the other one and tears it up and says, now it's the only one in the world. So this is what these guys did. They were two, and they cast them. One took one, the other took the other, and then they destroyed the mold. So that nothing was made. Can I have the next one? Now, 1910. Already in 1909, South Africa was going into union. All the four separate colonies, the Orange River Colony, and the Cape Colony, and the Transvaal Republic, and the Free State Republic came in and became one and became the Union. And they all knew that this was happening. And Van Wouw also suddenly realized, oh, he's on the wrong side. If he has to move over to the Afrikaner side now. And then he immediately threw his weight in with Afrikaner organizations. The first was he helped with the establishment of the Suid-Afrikaanse Akademie. He was one of the founder members there. And in that way he met the most important Afrikaner leaders at that time. The second important thing is that he joined Die Brandwacht, which was a cultural magazine, and he became the main artist on the Brandwacht. And that also helped him meet the most important people. Gustav Preller, he met D.F. Malan, he met Malherbe. All the important people that there was to meet, he met over there. And then, when in that same year, the commission for the Women's Memorial was put out. He went to Frans Soff, who was an architect, and he said, let's work together. And we submit that model that you see over there. That's their model. Submit that model, and I'm sure we're going to get it. And you know, they got models from all over the world, and they were ignored. They only accepted Van Wouw and Soff's model. So, because he knew all the people at that time, and they knew him. And he did, I think he didn't neglect to mention that, you know, he'd made the Kruger Monument. So he was in, and then they said, all right, create a sketch model, and he made that you see over there. And there are two little panels also that goes with it, and that would then stand on the front of that campanile that you see over there. But what he didn't understand, what Van Wouw didn't know, is that Emily Hobhouse, who was a very refined lady, was on the committee. And when Emily Hobhouse saw that, she said, that is absolutely horrific. You can't put that thing on a monument. Do something else. Go back. Go and look at Michelangelo's work. And Van Wouw went and had a look at the Pieta of Michelangelo, and then he created the figures of the three women, or the two women with a child on the lap, and in that way he created this monument. And when when the monument was unveiled in 1913, the Belgian government gave him the Legion of Honor. And you know, he was made. He was absolutely in the right place, the right man in the right place. And after this, he was given all the monuments in South Africa. For the next 30 years, all the monuments in the country were made by Van Wouw, because he was the big monument maker. Can we have the next slide? Then I'll just show you some of these monuments. Here are some of the big monuments that he created. It starts with Jan Hendrik Hofmeyer, big Afrikaner leader in the Cape. That monument was made in 1919, was finished in 1990. The trouble is it was already commissioned before the First World War, but it had to wait till after the First World War to be unveiled. Then that one of Dr. Andrew Murray for the Grote Kerk in Cape Town. The one of President Steyn, and both these were in 1929. President Steyn and Andrew Murray. only finished in 1929. Then Louis Botha for Durban, Lucan for Cape Town, and then the figures of the Voortrekker women for the Voortrekker Monument.